and Sabah Kamar and Zainab Fatma, they will make the presentation. And on the same theme, Abuzar Nasir Khan and Laiba Khan, they will make the presentation. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So we'll try to finish it, all the four groups today only. Let us start then.
Yes, sir.
Sabah and Zainab first.
Zainab, is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yes.
very much.
So, shall we start?
Please start.
It is mutual trust, even more than mutual interest, that holds human associations together. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. Today, I, Zainab Fatma Bilrami, along with my team partner, Sabah Kamar, will be presenting on the article The Neuroscience of Trust by the very known neuroeconomist and a world leader in researching the role of oxytocin, Mr. Paul J. Zak. Moving ahead, so these are the contents of our presentation for your perusal. So let's move on. Before proceeding, I would like to address a very basic question that must be arising in all of your minds. Why are we even talking about trust in the first place? Well, interestingly, a research says that organizations have trust in them that makes them more close together. Leaders in most organizations have observed low employee engagement, which is a sign of lost value. They kept on providing random perks like gourmet meals, karaoke Fridays, etc. to fix this. But these golden handcuffs do not seem to be having a lasting effect on the performance. For example, we, as students of MBA, can be given perks, boosters, and be taught in the best of ways to improve our class performance. For example, we have seen in ESD how Parasar goes out of his ways to explain the milestones and engage us more with our practice ventures. But all of this will be in vain if we do not cultivate trust among ourselves and with our teachers. Hence, Paul Zak, after years of research, had finally come to the only effective solution, that is, to create a culture of trust. Moving on, when employees are given clear directions and are treated like responsible adults, this cultivates trust as well as boosts engagement in the organization. For example, the naughtiest kid in the class, when he is made the class monitor and given some responsibilities, he automatically improves himself and becomes cautious of his actions because he knows he will be held accountable for the authority he has been given. Moving ahead, so employees at high trust companies were found to be more engaged, productive, and energetic and experience lesser stress, burnout than the counterparts. They even reap the benefits after they leave the office, reporting 29% higher life satisfaction. Moving ahead. Now, this article contains heavy terms like neuroscience, oxytocin, etc., which might be unfamiliar to your ears. So, in simple words, neuroscience is basically the way our brain works and functions, and in regards to the article with respect to trust. Whereas oxytocin is simply a hormone in the brain that controls the various aspects of human behavior. Having said that, let's move ahead. To elaborate how trust creates joy, I would like to cite the current scenario as an example. We, as a team, were assigned this purpose driven presentation to hone our communication skills. Now, this purpose is somewhat stimulating oxytocin in our brains and building a trust between us. So, Sabah here is sharing the screen while I speak, and I have a trust built on her that she will change the slides as I proceed. As a result, this is creating a sense of joy among us because our mutual trust is being fulfilled along with our purpose. I hope this makes it easier to understand the flow diagram. Now, moving ahead, There are specific hormones which inhibit as well as promote the release of oxytocin in our brain. High stress and testosterone are found to be inhibitors of oxytocin, whereas moderate stress and estrogen are found to be promoters of the same. Moving ahead, have you ever wondered what's happening in the brain? What makes us trust someone? Is there like a switch in our brain that makes us do so? Well, obviously not. So, in simple terms, when oxytocin is increased in our brain, our ability to trust someone as well as reciprocate this trust also increases. Let's take an example, assuming that oxytocin is a person named Oxy. Let's call this person Oxy. So, Oxy, me, and Sabah are great friends together. But when Oxy is absent, me and Sabah don't seem to bond very well. We have some kind of doubt towards each other. So we can conclude that Oxy is the binding factor in our friendship. Similarly, oxytocin is like an invisible friend between any two people that creates trust between them and bonds them together. Having said that, let's move ahead. Oxytocin reduces the fear of trusting someone and also increases empathy in a person. Have you ever seen someone in pain and felt for them? Well, this is your brain releasing oxytocin and making you feel what that person feels. So, the relationship between oxytocin and trust is a universal one. With this, I would like to hand over the rest of the presentation to my team partner, Sabah. Please take over.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Now, as Zainab explained that in this research paper, in this article, Mr. Polzak and his team told us about the neuroscience involved with trust and how we should relate it to the management of an organization to foster more employee engagement. So, as a result, he came up with 8 measurable management behaviors to foster trust in an organization. The first one is recognizing excellence. Now, recognition when the goal has been met has a huge effect on trust and motivation. An example we all can relate to is when we achieve something in our academics, when we perform well in our academics, we look for that recognition from our parents, from our professors, and from our friends. And that recognition creates a sense of trust and motivates us to do better. How does it create trust? That my efforts are being acknowledged. Similarly, when an employee puts his effort into his work and the organization acknowledges it, it creates a sense of trust that my work has been acknowledged and he would want to work better the next time. Another factor is public recognition. So we have seen such beautiful presentations during these past few days. And after those presentations, Sir would compliment them and provide positive feedback to the presenters. That motivated me and my partner Zainab to perform on our presentation well as well. Because we wanted those compliments and positive feedbacks too. So public recognition not only motivates that one person, but also inspires everyone around them. It was seen in his research that 106% more energy was shown by the employees at work when their efforts were acknowledged and when their achievements were recognized by the organization. The second one is inducing challenge stress. So when achievable but slightly difficult tasks are assigned to teams or employees, it causes stress, and that stress releases neurochemicals like oxytocin. And oxytocin is related to trust and focus and social connection. So when the example of this can be this presentation again. When we were assigned to present this article, it created a sense of stress in me and my partners and both, because presenting in front of everyone has never been easy for anyone. So, but it is not an unachievable task, and it had a concrete endpoint that it will end when I present this in front of all, you all. So, this inducing challenging stress actually coordinates the behavior of the teammates. My brain activity coordinated with Zainab's brain activity because we came together to work on this presentation. And working towards it actually made us, rather it had been a very unachievable or a tough or too easy task, we would have given up much easily. We wouldn't have been motivated, or we did not know when this was going to end. So we would have given up easy. So leaders should always take into account that the assigned tasks are not too tough, not too easy, and had a concrete endpoint so that the employees are motivated to work towards it. In his research paper, Mr. Polzak found that 50% higher productivity was shown by the employees of the organization where they were induced with challenge stress. The third point is giving people discretion on how to do their work. Once the organization has trained the employees well, they should give them the responsibility on how to do their work in their own way. People are different. People have different ways to approach to their life. People have different approach to their work, and people have different ideas. So when given the authority to work on it in their own manner, people actually perform very well. Example of this presentation again. When Sir assigned this article and presentation to us, he guided us at the beginning. He told us what we needed to do. But did he tell us the exact step-by-step procedure we needed to follow to make this presentation? No. Because if he had done that, all the presentations would have looked exactly the same. And we wouldn't have gotten to see those beautiful animations and pictures some people put in their presentation. So autonomy is very important. Autonomy actually enhances your personal growth. It creates innovation. Now, the fourth one is enabling job crafting. Organizations, when give choice to their employees to choose between the projects they want to work on, people often choose the one that interests them the most. The one people focus their energies on something that resonates with their likes. We have 9 subjects in MBA in this semester, and we had 6 in the previous semester. Did we all give equal attention to each of the subjects? No. We had our favorite subjects. So if given a choice to do an internship or write a research paper, we will choose the one that interests us the most because people tend to choose it. And we would work harder on it. We would put more efforts into it because it's something that we want to work on. So, when trusted with the responsibility, when trusted by the organization to work on certain something in your own way, in your own manner, and they give you the choice, people tend to select the one that interests them and they work harder. It increases their performance, it enhances their personal growth and performance in the organization. It was seen that in the organization where job crafting was enabled, 13% fewer sick days were taken by the employees. The fifth one is sharing information broadly. Now, when when the organization doesn't share their goals and purposes and
Abba, I'm
strategies.
afraid you will have to wind up now, huh? Because your 10 minutes are over already, and we have 4 more presentations.
Okay, sir. So sharing information broadly is, it frustrates a person when they are not sure about something, when they are not sure about the goals and purposes of the organization. So the organizations should always keep in mind to make that clear that they are open to their employees. The sixth one is intentionally building relationships. Researchers have found in various studies that people actually do not work on their relationships. They actually just focus on their work instead of building relationships with their colleagues. And Mr. Zach found in his research that working in relationships, working with connections actually enhances your performance in the organization. The seventh one is facilitating whole person growth. High level trust companies actually help their employees grow personally as well as professionally and not just help them in acquiring new skills. The eighth one and the last one is show vulnerability. When leaders ask for help with their employees, when they ask for help from their employees, it creates a sense of equality in the organization. It gives the employee the authority and the sense that they are capable of making a decision too, and they are not just the workers assigned by the leaders. So it enhances trust in the organization and it helps them to have more faith in the organization. The return on trust. So, what does this trust bring to the table for the organization? Why do they have to work so much harder on fostering this trust in the organization? Mr. Zach found that high-level trust companies actually paid more to the employees because the employees were more productive, more innovative, and had more empathy towards each other in the organization. So, fostering trust in the organization is extremely important because people would not work harder. People, it
इनका पेपर कितने घंटे का है?
the people would not work harder, and for the long run, it would not be profitable. So to conclude, Mr. Polzak and his research team actually told us about the trust, how important trust is in a workplace between the employees and the employees, and how the companies should change their minute behaviors and details to foster this trust. And the enhancement of trust is not just a theoretical aspect, but also a well-proven mathematical fact. Now, I would like to give it back to Zainab. Zainab?
Yes, due to the paucity of time, I'll just like to flag the importance of trust. It is basically the lifeblood of organizational vitality. So, Sabha, please deliver the closing note and thank you.
So, as a closing note, I would like to say that trust is a glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It is the foundational principle that holds all relationships. Thank you, everyone, for looking at our presentation. And so sorry we took so much of your time.
Thank you, Sabha and Zainab. Now, Abuzar Nasir Khan and Laiba.
Yes, sir, I'm audible. Laiba?
And please ensure that you don't exceed beyond 10 minutes.
Yes, you are audible, Abu sir.
Okay. Sir, we can start.
Yes, please. We are waiting.
Good morning to all of you. I, Abuzar Nasir Khan, and my friend Laiba Khan are here to present on the topic the neuroscience of trust. The neuroscience of trust is an article given by Paul J. Zak for the Harvard Business Review, in which he describes management behaviors that will foster employee engagement. So we will first look at the introductory part, that trust is something that cannot be bought. Most of the leaders and managers knows that. So they provide higher pay and they create fashionable culture, but it boosts only short-term happiness. It fails to create long-lasting effect on performance and retention of employees, and that can only be done through trust, because a foundation of engagement can't be built on perks alone. Paul J. Zak, professor and founding director of the Center for Neuroeconomic Studies, has uncovered some trust building solutions. Through his experiments and surveys, he has named 8 key management behaviors that will foster trust and improve performance. The problem and the solution. Leaders all around the world know that low employee engagement is a sign of lost value, and it's the problem they want to fix it. So they provide random perks, hoping that these will work, but actually they don't. So the simple solution for it is to create a culture of trust. And neuroscience research shows that culture of trust can be built by following 8 key management behaviors that will stimulate the production of oxytocin, that is a brain chemical that facilitates teamwork and build trust. The fact, Gallup's meta-analysis. Gallup is a management consulting company, and in his recent survey, he has showed that high engagement organizations have employees that have a strong connection with their work and colleagues. They feel like they are the real contributor. They enjoy each and every chance to learn, and this leads to positive outcomes for both individual and organization. And ultimately, the rewards include are higher productivity for the organization, better service delivered, and increased profit. Paul J. Zak research. He has researched that in high trust organizations, employees are more productive. They are more energetic towards their work. Their performance levels are high to those who are working in low trust organizations. They collaborate better with their colleagues. They are happier and feel low stress, and they stay longer with the organization. Ultimately, these factors fuel stronger performance. Leaders understand this thing. In 2016 Global CEO Survey, PwC reported that 55% of CEOs think that a lack of trust is a threat to their organization growth. Most of them have done little to increase the trust because in reality they don't know how to start and where to start. So now we will see that where to start. There are mainly four virtues of trust that an individual must have to become a trustworthy. They are credibility, reliability, intimacy, and low self-oriented. Credibility means to tell the truth, and reliability means to work in a team. Intimacy means to keep confidence in the colleague works no matter what the situation unfolds, and having a low self-orientation towards their work. And if any employer or any organization have these virtues in them, then there will be a creation of values, and that are that their employees will focus more on their work. They will collaborate better with each other. They have a long-term perspective with their organization, and they will be transparent towards their work. So, how trust creates joy? There is a brain chemical that is known as oxytocin. It stimulates when one trusts another. And when it stimulates, trust becomes more. And when trust becomes more, there will be more engagement and services provided in an organization, which will bring joy in the organization, and ultimately it will boost the performance of any organization. The word oxytocin itself describes the way to create trust. The word O stands for ovation, that is to praise publicly and unexpectedly. X stands for expectation, to induce challenging stress. Y stands for yield, that is learning through mistakes. T stands for transfer, that is management, wherever management, if you are there or not. Openness, that is crowdsource information. Caring, that is building relationship among employees. Invest, that is a whole person growth. And at last,
Abuzar, I'm sorry you have already taken 8 minutes. Does that mean that your partner
no
will
sir,
wind up in next two
no sir,
minutes?
it is last. My slide is last. My part is this last. And N stands for to be natural. So now I would like to call my friend Laiba Khan to present further.
Thank you, Abuzar. So now 8 management behaviors that foster trust. Recognize excellence, induce challenge stress, give people distraction in how they do their work, enable job crafting, share information broadly, intentionally build relationship, facilitate whole person's growth, show vulnerability. Recognize excellence. After the goal, manager has to appear support to their employer. Peer support, the unexpected gift, tangible, public recognition. Induce challenge stress. Challenge should be attainable and have a concrete endpoint. Vague or impossible goals cause people to give up before they start. Leaders should check in frequently to assess progress and adjust goals that are too easy or out of reach. Give people discretion in how they do their work. Allow them to manage people and execute projects in their own way. Being trusted to figure things out is a big motivator. A 2014 CT group and a LinkedIn survey found that nearly half of employees would give up a 20% raise for greater control over how they work. Enable job crafting. When companies trust employees to choose which projects they will work on, people focus their energies on what they care about most. Share information broadly. You have to share. The employer should share the information broadly. Only 40% of employees report that they are well informed about their company's goals, strategies, and tactics. Uncertainty about the company's distraction leads to chronic stress. Openness is the antidote. Intentionally build relationships. A Google study found that managers who express interest in and concern for team members' success and personal well being outperform others in the quality and quantity of their work. Facilitate whole person's growth. How you will facilitate the person's growth? Numerous studies shows that acquiring new work skill isn't enough. If you are not growing as a human, your performance will suffer. When managers set clear goals, give employees the autonomy to reach them, and provide consistent feedback, show vulnerability. Asking for help is a sign of a secure leader, one who engages everyone to reach goals. Asking for help is effective because it taps into the natural human impulse to cooperate with others. Like if you don't know what to do, then how should you know you will run the organization? Now, the return on trust. The effect of trust on self reported work performance was powerful. These figures are from Paul J. Zek survey. 88% recommended their company, 76% more engaged at work, 66% closer to their colleagues, 50% more productive, 11% more empathy. Conclusion. Now, the conclusion for it. People at high trust companies report that 106% more energy at work, 76% more engagement, 74% less stress, 50% higher productivity, 40% less burnout, 29% more satisfaction with their lives, 13% fewer sick days. Former Herman Miller CEO Max T. Pree once said, the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between the two, the leader must become a servant. Thank you.
Thank you, Abuzar and Laiba. Now, for the second presentation, we will first invite Sumaya Ikram and Aisha Shahid. And we'll be very happy if you can wind up in.
Sumani, can you turn on your mic?
Sumaya will be very happy if you can wind up in 9 minutes. Okay. Please.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'll be presenting alone. Aisha has left the course.
Okay.
Sir, I have informed you about this.
So how much time you will take roughly?
Sir, 9 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Please wind up in 9 minutes.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sumaya Ikram and I am going to present on the topic Crisis Communication Lessons of 9/11 by Paul Argenti. In the age of constant intensive changes, communication is key to restoring trust. Professor Paul Argenti from the Tuck Business School of Dartmouth University points out in this article that at the time of extreme crisis, it is important to connect with your employees and behave in a responsible, ethical, and coherent manner more than ever before. Leaders need to communicate early and often with the key constituencies throughout the crisis. Even if we're still trying to understand the extent of problem, be honest and open to maintain the credibility. Approach the situation with empathy. Some put yourself in your constituents' shoes to understand their anxiety. Sometimes you will get it wrong, and sometimes you will get it right. But it is still better to be as transparent as you can. Let's begin by understanding what is 9/11. September 11, 2001 attacks were a series of airline hijackings and suicide bombings perpetrated against US targets, perpetrated by 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al Qaeda. The hijackers took control of 4 domestic aircraft. The first and second attack was on World Trade Center, and the third attack was on Pentagon. And the last attack is in Pennsylvania. It is considered as the deadliest terrorist attack in American soil in US history. Crisis communication. Crisis communication is a strategic approach to corresponding with people and organization during an emergency. Crisis affects the smooth functioning of the business, so it is important to consistently communicate to maintain the business continuity and recovery. Crisis communication of 9/11. Many companies have faced disasters in the past, but what
Sorry
was
to
unique?
interrupt, Sumaya.
Yes.
Our slide is not changing.
And you are also not visible.
Okay, sir. Is it changing now?
Yes,
Yes,
and
yes,
if
it's
you can
changing.
put it on slideshow mode, that would be better. Because font size is so small that it is very difficult to read.
Sumaya, you should share your whole screen instead of sharing the PPT. Because of that, your slideshow is not starting.
Okay. Sir, is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Many companies have faced disasters in the past, but what was unique about the events of September 11 attacks was the breadth of their impact on business. Some companies lost scores of employees, many others had most of their infrastructure destroyed. A still larger group had to struggle with secondary effects like customers requiring heroic level of services, suppliers unable to fill orders, breakdowns in transportation and communication, collapses in demand, and every company in the country had to deal with traumatized and bewildered workers. Professor Paul Argenti had spoken with many managers about their experience and how they responded to the events of 9/11. What he discovered is that at the time of extreme crisis, internal communication takes precedence. Before any constructive action takes place, whether it's serving customers or reassuring investors, the morale of employees must be rebuilt. And he gave a number of lessons which serves as a guidepost for any company. The first lesson is getting on the scene. Um, During the crisis, visibility of the top level of management is the most effective part. Written statements are important. However, oral statements with an empathic human voice is necessary as they communicate sincerity. For instance, Verizon, a multinational telecommunication company, had faced enormous challenges. Former President Larry Babbio went to the site and inquired about the safety of the employees and the extent of damage. Dell, a multinational computer technology company, had a little impact from the attack but was emotionally devastated. After a few days, CEO Michael Dell decided to meet their directors and vice president and inquired how they and their teams were holding up. Choose your channels carefully. Because of the event, There was a disruption of normal flows of communication. Phone lines and power lines were destroyed, computer networks were gone down. This led to the establishment of contingency communication channels and work sites, where TV network played a major role by broadcasting a number of messages. CEO John Murphy of Oppenheimer Funds addressed his employees and customers by appearing on CNBC's Squawk Box. CEO Don Carty of American Airlines Group transcribed his voicemail and sent to the Sabre machines used for printing itineraries and tickets. The next lesson is stay focused on the business. It is important to keep employees focused on the business so that it enhances morale and in turn enhances their usefulness. Dell provided immediate assistance. Dell put the firm in direct contact with its thousands of customers. They established service and response teams through which customers could get in contact through phone lines and company's website. The stores of Starbucks in New York City branches reopened on September 13 to serve food to rescue workers at Ground Zero, people at blood donation centers, and to those at Jacob Javits convention centers. The next lesson is have a plan in place. The attack collapsed the internet web server of the Oppenheimer Trade Center office. The staff quickly moved to a newly created employee section of the company's website. Airlines had developed better crisis command centers. The strategic command center was a large horseshoe-shaped table equipped with workstations and a line of conference calls that can connect as many people as 200 outside callers. Large screen televisions were set up to monitor all news coverage of the crisis. A toll-free number by Verizon was widely circulated to ensure about the employees that employees obtain information from a single authorized source. The last lesson is improvise but from a strong foundation. It is important to ensure that employees have grasped the organization's value, which will lead them as they survive the unforeseeable. Stores remained open to provide food and drinks to rescue workers and hospital staff. Strong internal communication allows firms to strengthen themselves internally. Coming to the conclusion, the terrorism events of September 11, 2001 on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon unleashed the shock and fear among the employees working in corporations across the United States of America. These events elevated the value of crisis communication and its plan. In such times, internal communication is of great importance. The crisis demanded a quick and immediate response on the part of human resource professionals to resolve employee concerns about their own security and the adequacy of security policies in the corporations in which they work. Without these strategies, the employees' trauma and confusion might have immobilized their firms and sent their customers at risk. Managing a crisis communications program requires the same dedication and resources they give to other dimensions of their business. More important, they realize that their employees always comes first. Thank you. That was it from my side.
Thank you, Sumaya. Now let us listen to Ali Haris and Hamza.
Sir, one presentation was left. Lata and Zubair was going to present today because on their performance, two other performed. Lata, can you please explain?
So we have to present today. So on last Wednesday, that was our chance. But
On which topic?
the hidden messages the manager sends.
What about this group?
Before that, there is a group, Salim and Hassan, roll number 55 and 56.
No, what about Ali Haris and Hamza Khan, who were supposed to make a presentation today on crisis communication?
Sir, actually roll number 56, 57, 58 and 55 were supposed to present today, but Lata and Zubair exchanged their slots with 55 and 56.
Okay. ठीक है, तो please start immediately because we hardly have 8 minutes left now.
Zubair, please proceed.
Yes. Are the slides visible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. I, along with my friend and teammate Lata Chaudhary, will be presenting this article, Hidden Messages Managers Send, written by Mr. McCaskey, an associate professor, Harvard Business School. Now, what comes in your mind by looking at this phrase, Hidden Messages Managers Send? You might be thinking this is some kind of secret messages encoded in envelope needed experts to decode. No, not exactly. These are our daily behavior and our setting, our words that influences our audience. Starting with the first topic, we have non-verbal communication and imagery. Now, what is imagery? For example, if I
Zubair,
say,
sorry to interrupt, but your slides are not changing.
my slides are not changing.
Represent it by sharing your whole screen instead of sharing the PPT.
Okay. There might be some network issue. Now it is visible
Yes, it's visible and
and
changing.
changing.
Yes.
So starting with the non-verbal communication and imagery. For example, if I say to describe a railway station and I give you two passages, one from Wikipedia compiled of some facts and data, and for other one I ask a friend who writes creatively and who thinks critically. He describes the station as the trains are coming out of the station, going there. People are struggling to get into the train. Vendors are selling something. People are getting someone sitting, someone eating. Announcements are made every minute. Now tell me, which paragraph is more easy to relate with? Obviously, the second one. Now, this visualization of things is called imagery, and the opposite of it is a psychological condition called aphantasia. This black screen represented, where people cannot imagine things, they cannot visualize things. Now we have verbal communication and its features. We all have seen Steve Jobs and his video where he was launching his iPhone, an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator, and how he targets his opponents, BlackBerry, Nokia, Motorola, but in such fashion, packaged around such a joke that no one is offended. This kind of joke is admissible, not mockery, not trolling, and not bullying someone, but this kind of joke is admissible in a formal environment. Now we have a very interesting case study where a marketing vice president and an executive manager were disagreed and was in a meeting of his top managers. He goes there and says, "Who is driving the bus?" Now, literally, no one was. But with this phrase, two assumptions could be made that there is some
Seems there's some problem.
Sir, I will call him.
Sir, I want to present my part.
Okay, Lata, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So, sorry for the inconvenience. I just quickly want to provide a brief that Zubair has explained so far. The hidden messages managers send are vital in nature and tremendously important to a manager. Part and parcel of a manager's communication are imagery, the place, and the body movement that he or she uses. First, I would be discussing about body language. Body language is very, very important because it assists us in understanding and decoding what the person is saying all about. It interprets the people's mood and emotion. No matter how encouraging or interesting a speech is, if the speaker giving off negative body signals, then the audience is less likely to listen what he is saying. For example, if a person is shaking hand more firmly, we would say that the person is aggressive. Let's say you are talking to your friend and you are talking something very, very important, but he is yawning, meanwhile rubbing his face. So what would you analyze? You could understand that he is no more interested in your speech. And face is the most obvious conveyor of the feeling. Moving on to the next slide. Body language covers a wide range of human expression. The most crucial aspect of facial expression, cautious, eye contact, personal space, gestures, and voice. How a good posture could be a sign of better communication. Let's say you went to a store and needed some assistance. When you walked up to the customer service desk, you saw an employee. His arms are crossed, suggesting he is closed off and defensive. His face is scrunched as if he is irritated. He is turned away as you are not his priority. Hence, poor postures would undermine every word. Therefore, stay aware of yourself or you could give off wrong impression. I think we all must have watched the Golmaal movie, don't you? Of course, yes. There was a character of Lucky who was muted. He performed his character incredibly marvelous. Because of his body language, he was so expressive. He brought unlimited fun, laughter, and entertainment. So, if a person is giving some non-verbal signals clearly, it means that he is able to understand by others. Moving on to the next slide. Facial expression are one of the most important aspects of human communication. The face is responsible for communicating not only thoughts or ideas, but also emotions like anger, fear, surprise, embarrassment, shame, pain, etc. May be biologically hardwired and are expressed in the same way by all people of all cultures. Facial expression are the product of social learning and cultures. Hence, reading facial expression is a complex process. For example, raising or knitting of eyebrows depicts that the surprise state, or maybe shocking too. Widening of people shows that the sign of fear or unbelievability. Widening of widening of people shows that the sign of fear, right? So, like tightening of lip shows that the person is disappointed or maybe distrusted. Clenching of teeth shows that the person is irritated or annoyed. When speaking to someone face to face, one of the fastest way to build a personal connection is through eye contact. Good eye contact shows that you are paying attention and it also makes you feel and appear more confident and expressive. Facial expression with a voice account for more than 90% of communication. Moving on to the next slide. Paralinguistic. Paralinguistic is an aspect of communication that conveys information distinctly from other forms of language. The way the voice is used, as well as the way the people use their bodies while communicating. Here, I am moreover talking about the vocal paralinguistic features. It includes pitch, accent, speed rate, modulation, fluency, and volume. Moving on to the next slide. Vocal paralinguistic features relate to how we say something, or we can speak loudly or softly, which are the characteristics of people. A high tone of pitch indicates that nervousness, or maybe a question, and even anger in some people. A low pitch indicates that a doubt or authority in some people. A good fluency delivers a clear-cut message to the audience, and it shows that how much the confident the speaker is. For instance, if the volume of a friend is if the volume of your friend's speech is very low, then there is a good chance that he said over something. Likewise, if your teacher and a sentence with a high pitch, what would you say? It means that he is most likely asking a question. Similarly, voiced pauses. Voiced pauses are also well known and heavily discouraged among people. That's because voiced pauses like that interpret speakers' words are incredibly distracting and make it appear as though the lack of confidence or may not have an immediate answer. Moving on to the last slide. Last but not the least, the importance of reading hidden messages. It is a tactic of a successful speaker. Non-verbal messages influence communication. It gives a better understanding of ideas. If a manager pays close attention to these features embedded in their work life, they will enhance their awareness of communicating with others. This is all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have already crossed the time limit. So I'll share my feedback on the WhatsApp group for all the speakers who have presented today.
Assalamu
Okay.
alaikum, sir. Sir, my sincere apologies. I somehow unfortunately got disconnected. Should I restart, sir?
No, you have already presented. I think we have got the idea. And then Lata presented the summary of your part, because now we are running out of time. So we will have to wind up.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.